Save the King!
Hello and welcome to another episode of Pod Save the King. It has been a busy week preparing for the King and Queen's visit to the United States. Plenty of controversy from President Trump criticising the UK and other partners. We've got some details of what will actually be happening on the ground in Washington and New York. Questions over whether the visit should be going ahead. And of course, we have to speak about Harry and Meghan in Australia. What is this tour about and what are they trying to achieve? Harry is also being sued from the charity he once founded in his mother's name, and also details on the late Queen's 100th birthday celebrations coming up. So lots to look forward to. I'm your host, Russell Myers, the Royal Editor of the Daily Mirror, and I'm joined as ever by Jennifer Newton. Well, where to start, Jen? I mean, I suppose let's start with the King and Queen's visit to the United States, because, of course, this has been coming under some fire, not only just in the UK. We had Prime Minister's questions in the Commons on Wednesday, and plenty of MPs wanting to stand up and have their voice be heard, talking about whether this visit should be going ahead, whether there is a risk of the monarchy being embarrassed by President Trump. And you and I have found out some details of the tour, which really is very, very interesting. There have been, of course, questions and calls for the Queen to meet victims of Jeffrey Epstein, survivors of domestic violence as well. And it seems that the Queen is not going to shy away from this, in part because she is going to be meeting domestic violence victims on several occasions during this tour. But the advice from Buckingham Palace, and certainly I think the authorities, is that she should not be meeting any survivors from Jeffrey Epstein's crimes because of the possibility of prejudicing either cases in the UK or the US. And it certainly doesn't seem that they've ruled anything out in the future, but it's very, very interesting that they've drawn this line under it. What do you think of the tour, how it's shaping up so far?
I think it sounds a pretty good trip, actually. Pretty jealous that you're the one going on it, but no, it does sound really good. I mean, I think outside of the engagements that they've got planned, with Trump, they sound like quite poignant ones. Going to New York, going to the 9/11 memorial. I'm sure that's something that they really want to do and go and pay their respects there. But the visit to Virginia, I didn't see that one coming. It sounds pretty good though.
Yeah, there's definitely really some interesting aspects. They're going to be arriving on Monday, the 27th of April to Washington. There's going to be a tea party, then a ceremonial welcome. Then there's going to be this big state dinner where the King and President Trump are expected to make speeches. Now, what I have found really interesting, we were discussing it yesterday when we got some more details from Buckingham Palace, is that the King and President Trump's meetings are going to be kept very, very private. It seems that there will, of course, be these photo opportunities for the welcome and then the ceremonial welcome and, of course, the speeches, which will be very, very managed, although we can never legislate for President Trump going off script, which I think is a concern. It's not only a concern for the King and Queen, which I'm sure they'll sort of brush it off, but Buckingham Palace. This trip has been 6 months in the making. It's come under a lot of fire because of the United States war in the Middle East, the ongoing issues with negotiations with Iran, the criticism of the UK and our allies, certainly in Europe and Australia, not willing to sort of rush in to a war that doesn't really seem to have any exit plan. But we've seen over the last few months, certainly President Trump in the Oval Office being very, very controversial and heaping embarrassment. I don't think that's over-egging it, of having Vladimir Zelensky, the Ukrainian leader, other leaders in the Oval Office, and really sticking it to them. And I don't think anybody wants to see a situation where the King is sitting down in the Oval Office in front of dozens of reporters and the King started saying, well, you're all right. You're my friend, but your country is in deep peril. There are certain issues with whether it's the Prime Minister that he's called weak and not like Winston Churchill, or he starts laying in to the London Mayor Sadiq Khan. And what I thought was very, very interesting is the Sky News UK correspondent, or the US correspondent for Sky News in the UK, Mark Stone, had a 5 minute conversation over the phone with President Trump yesterday, and it was very, very far ranging, even though it was just a few minutes. And straight away, Trump was ready to talk about his relationship with the king, say he's known him for a very long time, he's a gentleman, he really respects him, as we well know, but straight in there with the criticism of the UK, saying, you certainly weren't there for us when we wanted. There are things that we can do with the trade deal that we've signed with the US, and I think that is a really big issue, and it's kind of leans into the point of whether this trip should be going ahead, because this is at the behest of the British government. There is obviously lots of talk always about the special relationship between the US and UK, but Trump, when asked about the special relationship, he just simply said, "With who?" I mean, this has got to be a concern for both the palace and the government, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think it is a concern, but I think that's the whole point of the trip, isn't it? For Charles to and Camilla to go over there and try and, yeah, like we said before, smooth over relations, and Trump is unpredictable. You don't know what he's going to do, but the thing that we know about what happens at the palace when they plan these things is they try and think of a scenario, like every single scenario that could happen. I mean, what sort of conversations do you think they're having just now? Like, if Trump does this, what shall we do? It just seems incredible,
Well,
really.
you
Like,
can't gameplay everything, can you? And I
no.
definitely know that there will be. I suppose they'll be thinking a lot about the King's speech and how he addresses the special relationship and the history between our two nations. Of course, we are told by Buckingham Palace that the main thrust of this trip is to be very much in tune with America's 250th anniversary of independence. It also fits in that you mentioned that they're going to be going to the 9/11 memorial in New York. It's just ahead of the 25th anniversary later this year of that horrific disaster. But again, there have been supplementary issues we spoke about at the top. There have been Democratic congressmen and survivors groups talking about the King and Queen should be meeting survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. And I'm just going to pull it back a minute, because I think that this is really important, and I totally see both sides of the argument here, that there is a cause for the King and Queen, and especially the Queen. She has been campaigning on this platform for many, many years now, and she wants to obviously carry on that role when she goes abroad. Now, the issue, as I mentioned, is that there are several investigations, both sides of the ponds, that are ongoing. There would be a severe risk of prejudicing those investigations, potentially, if the Queen was to meet a survivor and there were discussions that happened. Now, a spokesman for the palace have said that it wouldn't be possible for the Queen to meet survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's crimes on the state visit. But we fully understand and appreciate the survivors' position, but can only reiterate that our position is clear, that anything that could potentially impact on ongoing police inquiries and assessments, and any potential criminal action that could result from that, would be detriment to the survivors themselves in the pursuit of justice. Now, you could understand that point, and I think it's been very, very clearly outlined. But of course, we will see the Queen carrying on that side of her duties in the US. Does this draw a line under it? Do you think there will be further criticism on the ground? Will any, you would imagine the people that the Queen meets on any engagement are handpicked, but is there a potential for the King or Queen to be ambushed? I certainly do think that we may see some protests either outside the White House or in New York, or because Epstein is such a hot political topic in the United States, and certainly whether Trump has addressed those concerns, and of course we saw the First Lady Melania talking about her relationship or lack of a relationship with Epstein, and asking people to stick to the facts. I mean, are we expecting issues in the States, do you think?
Well, there could be, like you say, there could be protests, and we've seen it here, haven't we? We've seen the king be heckled on what, more, four, five occasions now,
Multiple, yeah,
multiple
yeah,
occasions
yeah.
now, and even those demonstrations that we've seen outside the likes of Commonwealth Day and on the Monday Thursday service, they've all been referring to the Epstein scandal and Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's connection with it as well. So yeah, it's always possible that that could happen. But it is quite interesting in what the palace said about how the Queen wouldn't be meeting Jeffrey Epstein survivors, saying that's not to take not it's not possible to take place on
Mm.
this state visit. Does that like leave the door open to that when police investigations are done? She might do. I mean, I think that could be a possibility in the
Yeah, I
future, but
mean,
it might be a long way off.
I think that the stakes are very, very high in this. I thought it was a really interesting interview that came out from Sky News yesterday, talking when Trump was talking about, we can just we can pull these deals, we can pull these trade deals anytime we like. We gave you a favourable deal, you haven't stuck with us. One would imagine that these deals, if they're international trade deals, would be mutually exclusive of agreeing to go into a controversial war, but it doesn't seem like that for Trump or the US at all. And certainly, I think that it is a potential issue for the king. I mean, he has to tread a very, very interesting tightrope in terms of the language that he's going to use. Of course, the Foreign Office will be helping him with his speech, and he will be talking about the history between the relationships. I don't think that Trump would want to, certainly would not want to embarrass the king. But would that happen as a result of going off on a tangent? Who knows what would happen? I think that we are to expect the unexpected, shall we say? But there are plenty of things to look forward to. Of course, we've sort of got the pomp and pageantry of the official welcome. We've got the big state dinner. I'm sure that there will be fantastic occasions, and then going to Virginia and New York allows you to have a bit of a more of a royal tour feel about the occasion. It is controversial, and the relations are in a bad state. So I think that this tour should have gone ahead. I don't think they should have pulled it. I think it would have incurred the wrath of Trump and the operation that is ongoing. Whether that's his opinions, what's going on in Iran or across the world. So let's just see what happens. There's plenty to look forward to, and I'm sure that the King and Queen will be navigating it perfectly. Now, while we're on the subject of royal tours, let's dive into how Harry and Meghan have been sort of welcomed down under, and it's pretty split down the line. I mean, if you look at some of the coverage that's happened, it seems fairly controversial. There's a lot of questions as to why they're there. Should they be doing this thing? There's questions or comments about them using Australia as an ATM machine. But it definitely has divided opinion. But wherever they've gone, you've got to give it to them. There's been huge crowds. They've been welcomed with open arms. But maybe let's address the more controversial aspects of it, because what was very interesting, which is exactly kind of what the royal family didn't want, was this sort of half in, half out model. It seems to have been very, very much out the Buckingham Palace playbook, the schedule. You've got visits to hospitals, popping in local charities, kicking a footy about, talking about mental health and so on and so forth. But then there's obviously the commercial aspects. Meghan appearing on an episode of MasterChef. We would expect the soft launch of, as ever, her lifestyle brand, and also the sort of influencer aspect to it. So can you sort of update us on this?
Yeah, so the influencer aspect, I suppose that's the this new AI powered fashion tool that Megan has become involved in. She's become an investor of actually. So basically, what this tool is, when you click on Megan's profile on this website, which is called One Off, it brings up a grid similar to Instagram, and then you can click the picture of Megan in one of her many outfits that she's worn during this tour, and then it will come up and tell you exactly what she's been wearing, and then you click if you want to buy it. Some of it's quite expensive, but if you do want to buy it, you click on it and it'll take you to the retailer in order for you to buy it. But it's one of these affiliate links, so if you do go ahead and buy, Megan essentially gets a cut. I don't know how much. We don't really know how much of a cut she's going to get, but she does get a cut. So yeah, I think that's a pretty big commercial thing that she's been taken advantage of in Australia, and even today their last day in Melbourne, three separate events, she wore three separate outfits. So that's,
Mm.
three separate times you can potentially make money.
And she's not popping down to Target or Marks and Spencer for her clothes. You know, these
No.
some of these outfits are thousands and thousands of dollars. Of course, no criticism of that. One would expect her to be wearing sort of high-end labels. I think there've been some Australian labels as well, which is very, very much what the royal family do, whether that's the Queen or the Princess of Wales, and that sort of gives a nod to your hosts and sort of aligns you to sort of local fashion as well.
Tomorrow morning is knocking. Stock your fridge now. How about a creamy mocha frappuccino drink? Or a sweet vanilla? Smooth caramel, maybe? Or a white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Find Starbucks Frappuccino drinks wherever you buy your groceries.
Then there have been great crowds. It has been labelled as a publicity tour. I mean, I don't really know what that means because, of course, it is to drum up publicity. That is whether that's publicity for the royal family to curry favour with the monarchy, as we've had when the king went to Australia himself. There was the question of republicanism in the midst, and I think they pretty much shot that down. The Republican movement in Australia didn't seem to really get off the ground when we were there. Um, and then the Sussexes have hit back. I think there was some criticism from their spokesperson saying that this visit prioritizes learning, listening, and supporting communities rather than promotion. I mean, I'm not sure how that really figures when you're attending a £1,400 a head wellness event that has sold tickets for, of course, and you are sort of tying in your clothes with AI influencer platforms that you are an investor in. But it is very much this half in, half out model, isn't it? I mean, you can't get away from it that you've created your own royal tour. I don't necessarily think this is a big issue. I mean, yeah, what are they supposed to do? You could either criticize by saying, why are they in Australia? Well, they're in Australia absolutely to do commercial ventures. I think the other stuff is a byproduct of that. Read into that what you will. People will say, no, it's great that they're going to the hospitals. You have to see the conversations they're having, the people that are there. But let's make no mistake, this is all about commercial ventures. Are they damned if they do, damned if they don't? And it seems to be always the issue with Harry and Meghan. But if you're in Australia, please let us know. I mean, I've seen some comments of a video I did for the Mirror today, and I mean, my inbox has been filled with, we don't want them here. Why are they here? Questions over whether the security, and their spokesperson did say that this is absolutely funded by themselves. Well, we know that wasn't true because of the police in various Australian states have had to pay for extra security, and no wonder, because there's been thousands of people on the streets. I mean, what are they to do? Are they just supposed to stay in California and go and do the odd speech?
Well, I think this is the problem that they've got because, like you are right, they have to make money, they have to live somehow, and they have to, be able to, live day to day. Probably have more extravagant budget than than you or I. But at the same time, if they didn't make money, then who's going to pay for them? Like the king, is he going to do it? Like what he does for
Well, he's
Andrew?
not, is
So
he?
he's not. He's not. So
Yeah,
they
yeah.
so they've got to do something. So if this is what they want to do and try and make a go of it, well, I suppose who are we to criticize that they're trying to make a little bit of money. But yeah, I do agree that to try and say that, oh, we this is not the primary purpose of the trip. It is to support charitable organizations. I'm not taking away from the charity work. Obviously, that's great, but I think that's a little bit,
Yes, I do think that's a little
disingenuous.
bit of disingenuous because popping up on MasterChef. I mean, that's debatable anyway. Popping up on MasterChef, but we'll potentially leave that there. I'm sure people have their own opinions. But it is about commercial adventures, and I think that is very, very, very plain to see. What I will say is that Harry does seem to be in his element because he has enjoyed tours over the years, and I think that he sees that as a vital part of the work. They've spoke about how service is universal. It does seem in that sense that you can create your own model. It didn't work for the royal family at the time. Whether they, I don't think that they're overly bothered, because there are certainly no conversations happening in the Buckingham Palace, as far as I'm concerned and aware of. That will they sort of strip away their titles? Do they think that this is an issue? There are other bigger things going on in the world, whether that's people like the King or the Princess of Wales having their health issues over the last few years, or big tours to the United States and beyond. Now, while we're on the subject of Harry, there has been some big news this week about he is going to be sued, or he is being sued by the charity that he created with Prince Seeiso of Lesotho all the way back in 2006, nearly 20 years ago now. He has obviously been the face of the charity for many, many years. It was launched to help young children and young people affected by HIV and AIDS in Southern Africa. But he is being sued for defamation, along with Mark Dyer, one of the other trustees. Of course, you will remember the very public row that resulted in several trustees resigning, as well as the two princes stepping down, Harry and Prince Seeiso, in solidarity with those trustees. And it came because of the sort of lack of governance and issues to do with lack of leadership and strategy from the charity's chair, Sophie Chandauka. Now, Sophie Chandauka went on the offensive last year while still sticking up for herself, she would say, accusing Harry of putting profit before purpose, saying he had caused donors to abandon the charity after he invited a Netflix crew to a polo tournament without clearing it properly. And now both Harry and Mark Dyer find themselves the subject of a libel claim lodged in the High Court in London this week. They have categorically rejected these claims and labelled them offensive and damaging. Now, I think whatever the result of this, it's a very, very unsavoury war of words. It'll be interesting to see if it goes all the way to a court case. And a once thriving charity is certainly losing sight of its original mission, isn't it? I mean, why would anybody want to get involved with Sentebale, which was such a popular charity, something that Harry really, really cared about? And it all seems rather ugly, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, the way I see it is that no matter how this situation plays out, there are no winners at the end of the day, because I don't think either side is looking particularly good from this situation at the moment. And we talk about, they're saying Sentebale have alleged that there's been a coordinated, Harry and Mark Dyer have coordinated an adverse media campaign against them. They've rejected the claims. It's just a bit of, back and forth, he said, she said, which it just happened it was the same as what happened last year. And even the Charity Commission just earlier this week have said that they're looking into this to see why this avenue is being pursued, because how does this help the charity?
Absolutely. I think the Charity Commission had already investigated Sentebale about that lack of governance. There were certain issues that they pulled up. They didn't necessarily agree with the whole war of words, if you can put it that way, that had happened previously. But I think the issue for Sentebale moving forward is, how do you attract donors to a charity like this that had a royal connection? It had a great story of Sentebale is, correct me if I'm wrong, it means forget me not, which was Princess Diana's favourite flower. So you had this incredible story that Harry absolutely loves, being anywhere in Africa. He has talked very, very passionately about wanting to help children with HIV and AIDS in Lesotho and beyond. And he'd attended so many engagements with it, helped the charity raise money. Then the lines were blurred about certainly this polo event, when he brought Netflix cameras along. Some of the donors weren't happy, and the people who were attending that event, that they were being filmed. They hadn't given their permission. Sophie Chandauka said that he was putting profit before purpose. I mean, I remember the interview she gave in the UK to Sky News, and she was absolutely scathing. She was saying that he was guilty of misogynoir, racism, that they had attacked her in a way. I mean, she is an Oxford University educated lawyer. She has served on the boards of numerous charities. She has had a distinguished career, and for her to sort of be labeling Prince Harry in this way and saying that she was the one who had been attacked. She was the one who was trying to get the charity onto an even keel after it had been mismanaged, tells you an awful lot about the situation that Centre Bale finds itself in. And I cannot see what good can come out of this. Who has backed it? Is this the trustees that obviously stepped down? There are obviously a new board of trustees in place. They must be backing it because she can't just be doing this herself. But of course, it comes back to when a charity such as this is in the news for the wrong reasons, the people who are going to lose out are the ones that it's trying to help. And they are, the poor children and young people of Southern Africa who Centre Bale have been helping for the last 20 years. And what a shame it would be if Centre Bale, couldn't raise those funds in order to stay profitable and help the people that it was trying to do over the last 2 decades. So let's wait and see. I mean, very, very interesting that the Duke of Sussex and Mark Dyer have called these offensive and damaging, categorically rejected anything that's being said in this libel claim. So we will be keeping up to date with that and looking at the direction it's going to go in, but very, very ugly scenes as well. Now, as we sort of look forward to next week, of course, we have Queen Elizabeth's 100th birthday celebrations. We touched upon this last week. Members of the royal family will be out and about throughout the week. We have the King's address to the nation. I'm sure he's going to be talking about her life and legacy. Both myself and Jennifer will be covering that over the next few days. Great to see it sort of celebrated, not just by the royal family, but I think there's going to be occasions up and down the United Kingdom and, of course, throughout the Commonwealth as well. No doubt it will get a nod when we get to the United States as well. Trump very, very invested in his relationship with the royal family. But looking forward, what else do we have next week as well as the 100th birthday celebrations, Jen?
Oh, so next weekend, not this weekend coming, but next weekend, it's Anzac Day, which remembers all the Australian, New Zealand troops that fought in the various wars. And so there's always a big service in London for this. So on Saturday the 25th, we've got Princess Anne. She's going to be at a dawn ceremony at Hyde Park Corner, commemorating Anzac Day. And then later in the day, we've got Kate, the Princess of Wales. She's going to be laying a wreath at the cenotaph and attending a service at Westminster Abbey. So yeah, it'll be really a poignant moment for them, and great to see them remembering such a special occasion.
Yeah, I think there's lots of extra collaboration going on. No doubt the members of the royal family, including Prince and Princess of Wales and Princess Royal, we expect them to be at the reception at Buckingham Palace for the representatives of the late Queen's charities and organisations as well. What I think is interesting, we haven't seen a lot of the Prince and Princess of Wales over the last week. We had Easter, they were off a couple of weeks. Will there be another trip to the US? I think a lot of people are talking about this in the Palace. However, as I understand it, at the moment, there hasn't been an official invitation for either the Prince of Wales. We know that he definitely wants to go and visit the US while England are in the World Cup. You might be better off going to the group games than rather, hoping that we reach the quarters or the semi-finals. There was sort of the way that the sort of schedule may plan out. I think if we get to the later stage, we've got to play France, Argentina, and Brazil. I mean, I can't.
We'll do it.
You never know. You never know. But that'll be something to look forward to. I think if the King, maybe they are looking at how the reception is for the King and Queen. Maybe they're looking at whether Trump does embarrass the royal family. I can't see that he will want to do that purposely, but does he say something about the relationship being under strain? Does that cause embarrassment to the government? Does William's trip fall into something different because he is the patron of the footballisation, the previous president of the FA? It's a World Cup year. Does he necessarily have to be invited by the host country? Maybe there will be some extra celebrations around those July the 4th Independence Day celebrations in the United States as well. I suppose just watch this space because there's plenty to look forward to. Wouldn't it be great if the Princess of Wales went with him as well? That would produce such a blockbuster moment. I suppose. We don't know. And if you're listening to this, in the United States cabinet or beyond, then I think you should invite the Prince and Princess of Wales there. It'll be a great occasion to sort of celebrate the World Cup in your country. Now, as ever, you can reach us at PodSave on social media. I'm at Russell J Myers on Instagram and at Jennifer Newton1. Hit us up with some of your questions. If you're in Australia, do you think that when Meghan and Harry should have been down under? Do you think that this is a sort of absolutely putting profit before purpose once again, or do the charities and the organisations that they've been visiting really benefit from extra coverage from the Duke and Duchess of Sussex being around? As ever, we are there to sort of answer your questions. Let us know what you want to see for the upcoming tour in the United States as well. So thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Pod save the king!